The Song of Ice and Fire miniatures game Kickstarter is live and in the wild. So let's talk about it. The Song of Ice and Fire miniatures game Kickstarter. Say that 5 times fast, I dare you.
The Song of Ice and Fire miniatures game is being made by Cool Mini or Not. This is their 28th Kickstarter. They are primarily a board game company that uses minis and have loads of successful games, such as Arcadia Quest and Blood Rage. They made one other pure miniatures game, a skirmish game called Wrath of Kings, which looks really fun, but I've not yet played because it's still all over my painting table. So, Cool Mini or Not is an old hand at Kickstarter, but a newcomer to miniature wargaming. Let's see what they have to offer. The main product is a two-faction starter, Starks versus Lannister. For $150, it comes with 104 miniatures and 35 unique sculpts. That's $1.44 a miniature, and these are large 32mm figures with a good amount of detail. Even better, with stretch goals, another 22 miniatures have already been added, which brings us to a total of 126 miniatures, of which 49 are unique. That's $1.19 a miniature, and the price will drop even lower if more stretch goals are met. But how does it play? Well, what we have here is a rank and flank miniatures game. You might be tempted to call it a clone of classic Warhammer or Kings of War, but don't. The intrigue the source material is famous for sets Ice and Fire apart from these other games. Instead of activating a unit, players can claim a spot on the tactics board, which provides an effect and may strengthen cards in your tactics deck, a hand of cards that you can play to affect the flow of battle and surprise your enemy. The campaign page has some graphics that give a good overview of how the game will work, and Cool Mini or Not has released a work-in-progress rulebook if you want to dive deeper. There are some weird bits and mechanics in the rulebook that I find questionable, but Cool Mini or Not has a few months to iron them out before production begins. Speaking of production, backers can expect their plastic to arrive in April of 2018. I see no reason to doubt this, as Cool Mini or Not has a spotless track record with over a dozen other Kickstarters. A few other things to consider. These models are pre-assembled and colored by faction, which means they come out of the box ready to play. As a gamer, this is awesome. Grab a starter set and you and a buddy can be rolling dice in mere minutes. As a modeler and painter, I'm a little more wary. It is often easier to paint parts of a unit before it is glued together, and I personally always paint models before I base them. Painting models already attached to a base is a huge pet peeve of mine. And speaking of models, this guy doesn't look anything like Peter Dinklage. Because the game is based off the books instead of the show, Ice and Fire cannot capitalize on the likeness of the show's characters, and instead will be modeling off the descriptions from the books. This doesn't bother me, but may turn off fans who are show watchers only. So how much will this Kickstarter make? After all, the more stretch goals it hits, the more figures will be added to the starter set. KickTrack has it topping 3 million, but I'm not so certain. It exploded out of the gate, getting to 500,000 in under 12 hours. After that, it slowed way down, partially in my opinion because of this unit of Houndmasters, which they broke up into 3 separate stretch goals that totaled 115,000. The Kickstarter has also done a few other stingy stretch goals, like converting individual piles of tokens to plastic instead of doing it all at once. They currently have several add-ons of differing value. They have house dice, 10 for $10, terrain sets for 17, and individual unit boxes for 30 each. The value of these is questionable, but the terrain packs seem reasonable, especially if you're a wargamer that doesn't have a lot of terrain.
So what is missing from the campaign right now? Well, a fair amount. Neither faction has a dedicated range unit, and only the Starks have a cavalry. The game will be a lot more viable once both factions have all the tools they need to wage war. It's unlikely that we will see a large house like Baratheon or Targaryen in this Kickstarter, but we have seen a pseudo-third faction in the form of House Bolton. As a mercenary faction that can fight for either side, it'd be great if we got enough units to field House Bolton on its own.
So how is the Kickstarter overall? I would give the product itself an A-, and the way Cool Mini or Not is running its Kickstarter a C+. I've included a link to the Kickstarter in the description. You should definitely check it out if you're a fan of war games, modeling, the show, or the books.